Let me tell you something that nobody in the financial world wants to say out loud. Something that the retirement industry, the financial planning community, and even your well-meaning friends and family have been getting spectacularly, heartbreakingly wrong. Working longer is not always the answer. There, I said it. And I need you to really hear me right now, because what I'm about to share with you has the power to completely change the trajectory of the rest of your life. Not just your retirement account, your life. The sunrises you'll actually see, the grandchildren you'll actually hold, the trips you've been promising yourself since you were 40 years old. I've spent decades sitting across the table from real people, real human beings with real fears and real dreams, helping them plan what should be the most rewarding chapter of their lives. And in all those years, one pattern has broken my heart more than any other. It's the pattern of the person who waited too long, who kept telling themselves, just one more year, just one more paycheck, just a little more security. And then one more year became 5. And then they looked up and their health had changed. Their energy had shifted. And the retirement they had been so carefully, so dutifully, so responsibly building, the one they sacrificed for, saved for, and dreamed about for 30 years, that retirement looked very different from the inside than it had looked from the outside. This is not a hypothetical. This is the story of hundreds of people I have worked with personally, and today I am going to tell you the truth that most retirement advice is too afraid or too financially incentivized to tell you. The hidden cost of working past 60 is real. It is significant, and for far too many people, it is devastating. The day Tom discovered that 2 years of his life were worth $300. I want you to picture a man named Tom. Tom is 62 years old, sharp as a tack, a lifelong accountant who has spent his entire career making sure everyone else's numbers added up. He came to me absolutely convinced that if he just worked 2 more years, just 2 more years, his retirement would be bulletproof. He figured more paychecks equals more security equals more peace of mind. Simple math, right? Wrong. When we sat down together and actually modeled it out, and I mean really modeled it out, looking at taxes, at missed Roth conversion opportunities, at suboptimal Social Security timing, at the net real-world impact on his monthly retirement income, do you know what those 2 extra years of Tom's life were actually worth? $300 a month. Not $3,000, not $30,000 a year, $300 a month for 2 years of his one and only life. Tom stared at that number for a long time, and I'll never forget the look on his face. It wasn't just surprise, it was something closer to grief, because in that moment he was doing the real math, not the financial math, but the human math. He was thinking about the summers he'd missed, the mornings he'd spent commuting instead of walking, the stress he'd carried in his body every single day. And all of it had bought him the equivalent of 1 modest car payment per month. That is the hidden cost of working past 60. And that is why I am making this a conversation we are going to have right here, right now, honestly and completely. What nobody tells you about your body after 60. Here's what the financial planning industry doesn't want to talk about, because quite frankly, they don't have a product to sell you around it. Your body has its own retirement timeline, and it doesn't care about your 401k balance. There is research, published, peer-reviewed, scientific research showing that every year you retire earlier actually reduces your risk of cardiovascular disease. Why? Because retirement lowers your chronic stress levels. It gives your body time to recover, to breathe, to repair itself. The stress of deadlines and performance reviews and office politics and the relentless pressure to produce, that stress lives in your body. It sits in your shoulders, in your chest, in your blood pressure, and over time, it takes a toll that no paycheck can undo. Think about that for a moment. You are sitting at your desk at 65, stressed out about a quarterly report when your body could be healing, could be recovering, could be getting stronger. The medical research is not ambiguous on this point, and yet retirement planning and healthcare planning exist in completely separate worlds, as if your financial life and your physical life have nothing to do with each other. They have everything to do with each other. I had a client, I'll call her Sarah, who was brilliant, successful, deeply accomplished. She worked until her late 60s because she kept telling herself she needed more savings, more cushion, more certainty. And she finally retired with an absolutely beautiful nest egg. She had done everything right by the conventional playbook. But Sarah's knees weren't what they had been. Her stamina wasn't what she planned for. The trip to Italy she had been talking about for 20 years, the one where she was going to walk through Rome, climb the hills of Tuscany, eat pasta in a piazza in Florence, that trip had to be significantly scaled back. Not canceled, but scaled back, because her body, the body she had pushed and stressed and neglected in service of one more year and one more year and one more year, wasn't quite keeping up with her dream anymore. Dollars, I always say, come and go. Years do not. The one more year trap and how it steals decades. I want to talk about a mindset that I see absolutely everywhere, and it is quietly costing people years of their precious lives. I call it the one more year trap. It sounds so reasonable, so responsible. I'll just feel a little safer with one more year. And listen, I understand that feeling at a cellular level. I do. When you've worked hard your whole life, when you've watched markets go up and down, when you've read scary headlines about people running out of money in retirement, the impulse to keep accumulating feels like wisdom. It feels like prudence. But here's the truth. For most people over 60, one more year becomes two becomes five becomes a decade, and suddenly they have worked a full 10 extra years beyond what was financially necessary, driven entirely by anxiety rather than by actual need. Fear is a terrible retirement advisor, and I say that with complete love and complete conviction because I have seen what fear does to people who could have been free. Here's what I need you to understand about the one more year trap. It doesn't just cost you time, it costs you the right time. Your early 60s are N, and I want you to really absorb this, your last best window of peak physical capability. This is the time when you can still hike through national parks without your hips protesting every step. When you can get down on the floor and play with your grandchildren and actually get back up again. When your energy is there, when your mind is sharp, when your body still says yes to the adventures you've been saving up for. And that window, unlike your savings account, cannot be replenished. It cannot be rolled over. It cannot be compounded. Once it's gone, it's gone. The safety illusion that keeps you chained to your desk. Let's talk about another story I hear constantly. Work keeps me secure. I have a paycheck. I know what's coming in. I understand why that feels true. I genuinely do. A paycheck is tangible. A paycheck shows up every 2 weeks like clockwork. It's predictable, it's reliable, and in a world full of financial uncertainty, predictability feels like safety. But here's what I need you to hear. That safety is more in your head than in your wallet. With a properly designed retirement strategy, with smart Social Security optimization, strategic investment withdrawals, and a thoughtful Roth conversion plan, you can create exactly that same sense of steady, reliable income without ever walking into an office again. The paycheck isn't the only way to create security. It just feels like the simplest one, and we've been conditioned to believe that if we're not earning, we're not safe. That conditioning, I would argue, is one of the most financially expensive belief systems a person over 60 can carry. Because here's what that belief costs you in real terms. When you continue working past 60 in higher income years, you may be jumping into higher tax brackets. You could be inadvertently triggering higher Medicare premiums. You could be losing access to subsidies and tax advantages that a retirement income strategy could have unlocked for you. Your gross paycheck looks lovely, but the net story, the real after-tax net of missed opportunities story, often looks completely different. Meanwhile, the Roth conversions you could be doing, the low tax bracket you could be filling up at a discount, the capital gains you could potentially harvest tax-free, those opportunities are sitting there, waiting, while you chase a paycheck that nets out to less than you think. Working smarter will always beat working longer. Always. Who are you without your title? The identity question nobody asks. Now I want to get into something that doesn't show up in any financial calculator, but that I believe is one of the single biggest reasons people delay retirement far beyond what their finances require. And that is identity. I had a client, a dentist, 30 plus years in practice, absolutely devoted to his patients, loved by his team, a genuinely wonderful human being. We'll call him Mark. And Mark came to me deeply ambivalent about retiring, not because his finances weren't ready, they absolutely were, but because he could not picture who he was going to be without his practice. Dentistry wasn't just what Mark did. It was who Mark was. It was how he understood his own value in the world. And I want to tell you what happened when Mark finally did retire at 64, because I think it matters enormously. He was terrified. And then, within months, he discovered mentoring. Young dentists just starting out, eager for guidance, craving someone who had been through it all. Mark became one of the most sought-after mentors in his local dental community. And he rediscovered woodworking, a hobby he had dropped 30 years earlier when his practice consumed everything. He built a dining table for his daughter's new home. He built a rocking chair that his grandchildren fight over. Mark didn't lose himself in retirement. He found himself, the version of himself that had been buried under decades of appointments and insurance claims and staff meetings. Retirement is not a finish line. It is a launch pad. And the people who understand that, who go into retirement with a sense of purpose and curiosity and the willingness to discover who they are outside of their professional identity, those are the people who flourish. The success trap, when winning becomes a prison. And then there are the high achievers, the doctors, the executives, the entrepreneurs, the people who have built their entire identity around accomplishment, around advancement, around the intoxicating feeling of winning. I love these people. I have enormous respect for them. And I also see again and again how their greatest strength becomes a costly trap in their later working years. Because here's the thing about high achievers. They are so accustomed to pushing through, to doing more, to believing that more effort yields more results that they cannot see the plateau. They cannot feel the point at which the returns on their extra years have diminished to almost nothing. Their drive, the very thing that made them successful, blinds them to the reality that more work is no longer adding more life to their balance sheet. It's not weakness to recognize when enough is enough. It is wisdom. It is, in fact, the highest form of financial intelligence. Because success in retirement isn't measured by the size of your nest egg. It's measured by the quality of the life that nest egg allows you to live. What the studies actually tell us and why you never see them in the headlines. Here is a statistic that should be on the front page of every financial publication in America, and yet somehow never makes it there. A study by New York Life found that over 48% of people who retired between the ages of 62 and 70 wish they had retired sooner. And on average, those same people wish they had retired a full 4 years earlier than they actually did. 4 years, nearly half of all retirees, wishing they had more time. And why don't you see that statistic in headlines? Because fear sells. Scary stories about running out of money in retirement get clicks. They drive anxiety. And anxious people buy products and read articles and watch videos, desperately searching for certainty. The retirement industry profits from your fear. But the real story, the human story, the one that shows up when you actually ask retirees what they regret, is not, "I wish I had saved more." It is, "I wish I had started living sooner." There's also something called BMC geriatrics research that found retirement genuinely boosts life satisfaction, particularly for people whose health was beginning to feel uncertain. And the reason makes complete sense when you think about it. Human beings are remarkably adaptable to financial change. We can cut our budget by 15%, and within a few months, we barely notice. Our lifestyle adjusts. We find joy in different things. We are wired for that kind of flexibility. But we are not wired to adapt to lost time. We don't get used to the years we missed with our grandchildren. We don't adjust to the travels we were too tired or too sick to take. That regret doesn't fade. It compounds. Linda's story, the loss that no budget can fill. I want to tell you about Linda, because Linda's story is the one that stays with me. Linda was a client who was very close to financially ready to retire at 63. Not perfectly ready by some arbitrary standard, but genuinely, practically ready. Ready enough. But she kept waiting for certainty that was never going to fully arrive. One more year. One more year. She missed her first grandchild's first steps. She missed the preschool plays, the Saturday mornings at the park, the random Tuesday afternoons that nobody plans, but that children and grandparents remember forever. She was at her desk during those years, earning money she didn't strictly need, building a nest egg that was already large enough. When Linda finally did retire, she told me something I will never forget. She said, "I have plenty of money. I just don't have those years back. And no amount of money has ever hurt me the way that does." Not one budget cut Linda ever made in retirement has haunted her. Not one financial adjustment has kept her up at night. But those early years with her grandchild, those irreplaceable, unrepeatable years, that loss is permanent, and she carries it. I share Linda's story not to frighten you, but because I believe the truth, told with love, is the most powerful tool I have. And the truth is this: you can always adjust a budget. You can always earn a little extra income if you need to. You can cut a subscription, downsize a vacation, make 1,000 small financial pivots. But you cannot go back and be present for the moments you missed. That door closes and it stays closed. The optimal retirement balance: health, money, and meaning. So what is the answer? If working longer isn't always the right choice, and if the fear-driven one more year mentality is quietly stealing people's best years, then what does good retirement timing actually look like? I call it the optimal retirement balance, and it rests on 3 pillars, not 1, not 2, but 3. Because any plan that only optimizes for 1 pillar will eventually collapse under the weight of what it ignored. The first pillar is your peak health window. You need to be honest with yourself about your health trajectory. How is your energy right now compared to 5 years ago? What does your family history tell you about longevity and vitality? What does your doctor tell you? Your early 60s may be the last chapter in which your body is genuinely capable of doing the things that make life feel rich and full and worth celebrating. That window is precious. Plan around it, not as an afterthought, but as a first priority. The second pillar is financial sufficiency, and I want to be very precise about this word, sufficiency. Not maximum, not theoretical perfect, sufficiency. This means sitting down and calculating what you actually need to live the life you actually want, your real expenses, your real desires, your real lifestyle, and comparing that number to what you actually have. Not some generic benchmark someone wrote in a magazine. Your number. And I will tell you from decades of experience, most people are significantly closer to financial sufficiency than they believe. The gap between where they are and where they need to be is far smaller than fear has led them to think. The third pillar is emotional readiness. Do you know what you're retiring to? Not just what you're retiring from, but what you're walking toward. The research is clear. People who retire into purpose, into relationships, hobbies, community, meaning, thrive. People who retire into a vacuum struggle. You need more than a nest egg. You need a reason to get up in the morning that excites you. Travel, volunteering, creative pursuits, mentoring, learning, family, whatever it is that lights you up. Identify it, make it specific, and build it into your retirement plan from day one. When these three pillars are in alignment, when your health window, your financial sufficiency, and your emotional readiness are all present, that is your optimal retirement moment. Not the moment when you've maxed out every possible account. Not the moment when fear finally releases its grip. The moment when all three say yes. The practical steps, what you can do starting now. Let me give you something concrete to take from this, because understanding the problem is only half the work. The other half is doing something about it. Step 1, conduct a health timeline assessment. Sit down honestly and quietly and think about your health, your energy levels today versus 3 years ago, your family history, your genetics. Consult with your doctor if you need to. Be honest about how many fully active, vibrant years you realistically have ahead of you, and factor that into your retirement timing the same way you factor in your savings rate. Step 2, create your financial enough analysis. Throw out the arbitrary benchmarks. You don't need $2 million because some article said so. You need whatever number supports your actual life. Write down what you genuinely want to spend each month in retirement. Travel, family, hobbies, healthcare, housing, all of it. And then measure your current assets against that real number. You may find that enough is much closer than you thought. Step 3, design a life value maximization strategy. This is simply a commitment to being intentional about what your retirement will actually contain. What experiences are non-negotiable for you? What relationships do you want to invest in? What have you been promising yourself that you keep pushing to someday? Name those things. Schedule them into your early retirement years deliberately, because your best health window is finite, and those experiences deserve your best energy, not what's left over after everything else. Step 4, build a strategic drawdown plan. Map your Social Security timing to maximize your lifetime benefit. Identify Roth conversion opportunities in lower income years. Design a tax-efficient withdrawal sequence from your accounts. This is where working smarter pays dividends that can genuinely rival or surpass the value of extra working years. Strategic tax planning alone can add tens of thousands of dollars over the course of a retirement. That is not a small number. That is real money earned not by grinding for another 2 years, but by being smart about the assets you already have. The mistakes I see every single day. Because I love you, I'm going to be direct. These are the mistakes I see people making over and over, and every single one of them is avoidable with the right information and the right guidance. Ignoring health in financial planning, treating your body as an afterthought while obsessing over portfolio percentages. Money is wonderful. Money gives you options, but money cannot buy you a healthy, active, vibrant life once you've spent your healthiest years in an office you didn't need to be in. Overestimating what extra years after 60 actually add. Tom's $300 a month should be a wake-up call for everyone. Run the real numbers, the after-tax net of missed opportunities numbers, before you assume that one more year is automatically worth it. Ignoring the tax cost of continuing to work. Higher income in your later working years can push you into higher tax brackets, raise your Medicare premiums, eliminate subsidies, and shut you out of strategic planning opportunities that require lower income years to execute. The gross paycheck flatters. The net reality often disappoints. Assuming your health will hold steady through your 60s and 70s. I say this with tremendous compassion. Please do not make this assumption. Health changes can happen quickly and without warning. Plan for the possibility that your active years may be more limited than you hope, not as pessimism, but as wisdom. Following generic advice designed for a generic person, you are not generic. Your savings, your health, your family situation, your goals, your values, your definition of a good life, none of it is generic. Your retirement plan should not be either. And finally, please hear me on this. Do not delay out of fear. Fear is the worst possible advisor you could ever consult on a decision this important. It masquerades as prudence. It tells itself it's being responsible. But what it's actually doing is costing you years you cannot get back. Clarity is what replaces fear. A real plan, an honest, personalized, complete plan is what gives you the genuine confidence to make the leap. What waits for you on the other side. I want to close by telling you something that I believe with my whole heart. Something I have watched become real for hundreds of people I have been privileged to walk alongside. When you get this right, when you retire at the right time for your health and your finances and your heart, the life waiting for you on the other side is extraordinary. 3 to 5 extra years of your prime, years you would have otherwise spent in an office, now belong entirely to you. The hiking trails, the grandchildren, the sunsets, the guitars unplayed for 30 years, the languages you always wanted to learn, the friendships you always wanted to deepen, all of it yours. Greater lifetime satisfaction. That's not a marketing phrase. That's what the research shows. And it's what I see with my own eyes in my clients who time it right. They are not just financially secure. They are deeply, genuinely happy. They got out of their money exactly what it was always supposed to deliver, a life well and fully lived. Fewer health regrets. Retire before the decline, not after it, and your retirement is filled with capability rather than limitation, with activity rather than recovery, with joy rather than the bitter if only. Smarter tax outcomes. The strategic planning opportunities that open up in retirement, Roth conversions, tax-efficient withdrawals, capital gains management, can add tens of thousands of dollars to your lifetime income, earned not by working harder, but by thinking smarter. You have worked for this. You have saved for this. You have earned the right to ask yourself honestly, not what the financial calendar says, not what your neighbor did, not what fear whispers to you at 3 in the morning, but what you need. What your health needs, what your family needs, what your soul needs. Because the hidden cost of working past 60 isn't just a financial miscalculation, it's a life tax, and it is absolutely, entirely preventable. Now go build the retirement you actually deserve.